Hello, we're coming towards the end of this wonderful book, Held in God's Gaze, written by our authors here, Jill Duff and Nicholas Heale, coming to some more modern responses. And we're going to think today about St. Seraphim of Sarov. Bishop Jill, tell us about him.
So he was a hermit in the Russian forests, and we have very little about him. Unlike the Desert Fathers who often hid from people, he would be happy to make himself known. And we have this account that was kind of rediscovered in about 1910, hidden under bird poo in an attic in Russia, of a young man called Motovilov, who went to see him and just asked him about what does it mean to be in the Holy Spirit? And it recounts the story. This account was excavated and hit the Russian press just before the revolution. I think it's been a bit lost in the times now since then.
And he says the true aim of the Christian life is the acquisition of the Spirit. What do you mean by that?
Well, that's exactly what Nicholas Molotov asked him. And in response, Seraphim almost sort of breathed and went radiant and said to him, "What do you feel?" And Nicholas said, "Well, I feel a warmth, like in the sauna. What do you smell?" And he said, "I smell a fragrance." And it goes through almost different sensory expectations of what he encounters by being in the presence of Seraphim, who's literally carrying the Spirit so richly.
And Nicholas, you talk about Seraphim being transparent to God. It's a beautiful expression, isn't it? How can we learn from Seraphim ourselves to be more transparent to God?
I think that Seraphim had committed himself so completely to the life of prayer, to the reading of the Psalms and the Gospels especially, to training himself in that tradition of the desert, to weed out the influence within him of anger and pride and lust and greed and all of the other passions, as the tradition calls them, so that, as the Apostle Paul puts it, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And for people like Seraphim, for the people who really have devoted themselves to this pattern of life, very, very, very self-effacing, it is truly as if it is no longer their ego which we encounter when we see them, but the space filled rather with the presence of God. And so I use this phrase, transparent to God, to describe those people. And we have had many of them along the way. Isaac of Nineveh is another, who has this transparency to God that we don't see very much of Isaac. We don't see very much of Seraphim. What we see is somebody who has allowed themselves to take the second place so that it be the glory of God that shines through them, the image and likeness of God within them, which is made tangible and manifest.
I think very often we think of the acquisition of the Spirit as kind of the work of a second. You pray for the Spirit, whoomph, he turns up. But there's a real discipline over time in this life, isn't there? There's a real, there is a deep discipline in the spiritual life.
Yeah.
It's the work of a lifetime, isn't it?
I think John the Baptist speaks about being baptised. And the word baptised was just a normal word in everyday language at that time of soaking with a dye and actually soaking all the fibres of your being with the Holy Spirit. I do think it would be... I don't think our bodies could cope with like as you say, a womp for the Spirit. But what does it mean to, like Paul speaks about in Galatians, that it's no longer I but live. So I've been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. From my tradition, when we become a Christian, we invite Jesus into our hearts. And that's something I did when I was 11. But what does it mean for Jesus to be literally filling our whole body by his Spirit? Every single idol, every single throne, every single part, every single way in which we bend in ourselves, where every single trauma and pain. What does it mean for Jesus to fill that space, that we're transparent with God? It's not, you're not encountering Jill's pain or Jill's ego, but you're encountering Jesus.
And it's been lovely in these short films to hear something of the saints themselves. So we've got a Seraphim prayer to finish off with.
We'll have a Seraphim. He didn't really sort of pray so much, did he? But we have a lovely sense of what he invited people into. Let me just find it. So this isn't a prayer, but it's just how the Spirit travels. Distribute the Holy Spirit's gift of grace to those in need of them, just as a lighted candle burns with earthly fire, shines itself, and lights other candles for the illumining of all in other places, without diminishing its own light. If it's so with regard to earthly fire, what should we say about the fire of the grace of the all Holy Spirit of God? For earthly riches decrease with distribution, but the more the heavenly riches of God's grace are distributed, the more they increase in the one who distributes them. And I think that's our hope for the economy of this book.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you.